I'm Andrew Barnes, and what I want to talk to you today about is whether the 4-day week represents a panacea for the 21st century workplace. And I want to look at research that I hope will prove that it is. Now, as we focus on the way in which we're going to work post-COVID-19, I think it's worth, first of all, looking at what the big issues are that are facing business today. And that is poor productivity. It's corporate resilience in a post-COVID world. It's mental health and stress. It's gender pay and equal opportunities. And finally, it's the environment. And there's increasing pressure on business to address some or all of these issues. And this is coming from employees, it's coming from shareholders, consumers, and governments. And the problem is that traditional methods of work don't address the majority of these issues. And in fact, current trends, which are towards longer working hours, are actually making things worse. But before we get to the research, I think it's important to define just exactly what we mean by the 4-day week. Now, when we talk about the 4-day week, we mean at its heart, it's a reduced hours working week on normal weekly pay, but which maintains or enhances current levels of productivity. Now, we refer to this as the 100-80-100 rule. 100% pay, 80% time, but provided we maintain 100% of normal, i.e. 5-day productivity. Now, this model can apply to all contracts because the formula works whether you're working full-time or indeed part-time. And the time off can be taken flexibly. In my organization, people take a day off, some people take 2 days off. And in fact, a lot of working parents work 5 days a week, but they work reduced hours, coming in late or going home early. And the reason we did that is that we had to build a model that meant that we could manage to maintain our retail outlets. We are a retail business as well as a call center and central office business. And we therefore have to make sure that our business is able to operate normal business hours. But the key thing about allowing people to take time flexibly is it means that they take the time off that's important to them, that matters to them. And the best example of this is I have a chap in my Dunedin office. He takes 2 afternoons off a week. And what he does with that is that he walks home and then he spends his afternoon with his granddaughter. They have tea together and then she goes home. And when he tells me about what he's done, he cries because this matters so much to him. Now, this concept of the 4-day week was prompted by some research. I was sitting on a plane and read an article in the UK Economist magazine that said that British workers were actually only productive for about 3 hours a day. And so I implemented the policy of the 4-day week to see if I could improve productivity in my business by driving changes in behavior, not just about process changes, but personal changes in how people worked. Because after all, if you're only productive for 3 hours a day, you only have to find an additional 45 minutes of productivity in each of 4 days in order to deliver the same amount of 5-day output. Now, sadly, it's a recurring theme that research into the impact of changes in work practice are largely driven by employees, people like myself who say, look, I'm going to try something in my company and see if it works. Unfortunately, there is very little large-scale cross-sector research. And in fact, it was almost by accident that we ran qualitative and quantitative research alongside the introduction of the 4-day week. And that was driven by Auckland University Business School and Auckland University of Technology. Now, I think being first and foremost a businessman, my interest in this is primarily from a business perspective. and specifically upon the impact on productivity. Now, what we found when we implemented the 4-day week is we found that productivity in the company improved about 25%. And this has been sustained since we implemented the policy full time in late 2018. And so that my business is now twice as productive on a per capita basis as my nearest competitor in the New Zealand market. Now, when we turn to the research, the quantitative research was benchmarked against 6,000 employees in the New Zealand marketplace. And what we found from the research was that our engagement scores, those are engagement, enrichment, empowerment, those sort of scores went up between 30 and 40% to the highest levels that the researchers had ever seen in New Zealand. We found that stress levels dropped 15%, but interestingly, more people said that they were better able to do their job working 4 days rather than 5. The scores for team psychological capital and cohesion, and those are the scores that reflect the way in which the team operates, increased to levels 25% above New Zealand norms, which were described by the researchers as absolutely amazing. Now, the outcome of this was that team reported that they believed that as a consequence of the 4-day week, the company was more resilient. Now, if you think about it, having staff members off regularly every week, it's different to when you have staff members off on an ad hoc or due to sickness, because it requires you to have a program of cross-training to ensure that the company continue to operate effectively. Whereas if you've got someone who's off for a sick day, quite often matters are just left until they get back. That is not an option when 20% of your company is effectively out of the office at any point in time. Now, what we found when New Zealand went into a full lockdown last year and all the staff went home, we found there was absolutely no adverse impact on our productivity and performance. Now, I'm going to put that into context. At the time of lockdown, only 200,000 of New Zealand's 2.4 million workforce were either not being paid by the government or receiving wage subsidy due to a fall in corporate performance. So a very small fraction of the employee population. By contrast, in that period, we had 2 record months and 1 month which missed a record by only $27,000. So it's my contention that corporate resilience is going to be a key attribute in the post-COVID world, and that a 4-day week policy facilitates the development of an effective solution. Now, as I've said before, one of the problems is that there's very little research on the impact of a 4-day week. What we're still lacking is this major randomized trial that can take the evidence from the suggestive to the causal level. Currently, the Oxford Wellbeing Research Centre is working on a few projects, and the proposed trial of the 4-day week, which is currently being supported by the Spanish government, will probably generate some good data. But that is not likely to provide such research until probably 2022 at the earliest. And so in the interim, we're therefore obliged to look at, I think, studies in related areas that will help us to tease out the impacts for business. Now, one such piece of research is, does working from home work? And this was done by the Graduate School of Business at Stanford University. And what this did is it looked at a working from home policy at a Chinese NASDAQ-listed travel agency with 16,000 employees. Their CEO at the time happened to be studying at Stanford. And what happened there was that call center employees who volunteered to work from home were randomly assigned either to work from home or in the office for approximately 9 months. Now, what this piece of research showed was that was a 13% performance increase from those people working at home, from home, of which about 9% was due to more minutes per shift, primarily fewer breaks or sick days. And about 4% came from more calls per minute, which was attributed to individuals being in a quieter working environment. Now, if I put that into the context of our 4-day week, we extracted more productive minutes from the working day by reducing unproductive time. And that is coffee breaks, overlong meetings. And we also use techniques like the quiet hour. And the quiet hour basically means that an employee can put a flag in their pot, and when it's in that pot for 1 hour, they are not to be disturbed. And the reason you do this is statistically, in open plan offices, individuals are disturbed once every 11 minutes, and it then takes them about 20 minutes to get back to full productivity. So a quiet hour effectively is giving you 3 hours of full productivity. Now, with other such tools as, no disruptive internal meetings near desks, lockers, so you could lock away your mobile phone if you couldn't trust yourself not to look at it, and other noise reducing design tools, are breakout areas have soft furnishings around them which absorb the noise. We also created a quieter working environment. Now, therefore, I think that goes some way of seeing that the reasons that we improved our productivity are not dissimilar to the ways in which a working from home policy drives better productivity. Now, actually, independent of our trials, a 1998 survey showed that background noise can actually reduce cognitive performance. So again, there is evidence that quieter working environments do improve productivity. So in many ways, the working from home outputs and results mirror those of the 4-day week. Now, both policies also see fewer sick days. Our sick days post the 4-day week have halved. Similar results came out of the working from home trial. Both reported improved work satisfaction and saw a reduction in staff turnover. But they also, interestingly, the Stanford study and our own study also indicated exactly the same negatives. In the Chinese company, managers were concerned about the lack of direct supervision they had of staff. Now, that was notwithstanding the fact that staff working from home had improved performance versus staff working in the office. And in fact, the staff working from home also saw reduced promotion rates. Now, in my business, when we introduced the 4-day week, frankly, all my senior leadership thought I was mad and were extremely cautious about the 4-day week. And staff were equally concerned that if they took the time off, that they would be disadvantaged, certainly as far as promotion and pay rises were concerned, against those staff that were working, 5 days a week in the office. Now, the reluctance of management to embrace non-traditional working was partially addressed by ensuring the managers were clear that this policy was completely and utterly supported by the senior leaders in the company and also by the board. We also put in specific performance goals around its success and implementation. And finally, and I think most critically, we addressed the problem by making it mandatory for leaders to work 4 days and not 5. We addressed the problem by making it mandatory for leaders to work 4 days and not 5. Now, what we saw in both trials is the issue of reduced work socialization came up. And I think specific policies have to be implemented to address this. Now, we were lucky enough at the time that we were implementing the 4-day week that we were literally moving floors. And so we were able to incorporate a redesign of office space to create a larger breakout area, as well as policies which required staff to eat their lunch, for example, in the staff luncheon room, rather than sitting at their desks. Because the last thing we wanted is an old traditional view of, people in serrated desks, but not actually talking to each other. Socialization remains an important part of any business environment. Now, there's been another recent study, which this case conducted by the Oxford University Wellbeing Research Centre. And this shows that when employees are happier, they work faster, and that better mood states may well improve cognitive functioning and ability to focus, as well as maintaining customer satisfaction. Now, it's an old adage. In my old days in the Navy, we used to talk about a good ship being a happy ship. And this seems to be borne out both by the Chinese study and our own experience of Perpetual Guardian, that staff happiness does lead to better performance. So if I can summarize the impact on a company, a business sees improved productivity, lower staff attrition and sick days, improved staff happiness and well-being, and it creates better customer service outcomes and greater corporate resilience. What's not to like? In addition, fewer people in the office means smaller premises, lower costs. We found also we were able to attract higher quality candidates because many millennials are attracted to workplaces which appear to be both more progressive, but the key point is 80% of millennials say that they would trade pay for more leisure time. Now, lastly, let's look at the impact on wider social issues. So mental health, gender pay, and opportunities, as well as the broader benefits to the environment and society. Now here, again, research is incredibly limited. So I'm drawing on outcomes from a white paper that was produced by Henley Business School in 2019. This surveyed 500 UK businesses, of which about half were implementing some sort of 4-day week. Now, mental health was the pandemic before the pandemic, with 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 employees at some point in their life suffering from mental health issues. Now, allowing more downtime actually helps to address this issue. 70% of workers surveyed indicated that a 4-day week would assist with this. Now, in the UK, approximately 15 million workdays are lost every single year to stress-related issues. So actually, if we're able to address this at source, this has potentially a significant benefit to both business and society. Now, it's worth noting, we saw a 50% reduction in sick days. The Chinese study also saw those improvements. And it seems strange to me that New Zealand, where I live, as with other countries, is spending billions to deal with the effects of mental health rather than addressing the problem at source. Now, gender pay, it also gets impacted by the 4-day week because it makes it okay for both men and women to take time out to deal with family and care responsibilities. Now, 71% of businesses in the Henley survey indicated that a 4-day week would help them to attract both men and women with children or care responsibilities. And 66% of the employees said that the primary use of the additional time that they would get, they would use for family purposes. Now, this is a big issue. In Ireland, for example, 95% of all care responsibilities are handled by women. So if we're really going to address the gender issue, we have to get our men out of the office as well as helping our women up. Now, paying on output and productivity, which is what the 4-day week policy does, also removes the disadvantages women face when returning to work after maternity leave, often then negotiating the 4 days week, 4 days pay contract. With the 4-day week in our business, those contracts were normalized to 5 days pay. And often, bizarrely, returning mothers have the best time management skills and are amongst your most productive staff. And then finally, let's turn to the environment. Now, a recent research report by UC Davis suggested that not going into the office was possibly the most environmentally friendly thing that you could do. And we've seen for ourselves in lockdowns the impact on air quality. Now, Henley estimated that if all organizations were to introduce a 4-day week, UK travel would decrease by more than 500 million miles each week, reducing fuel consumption by 9%. And this in turn would see economic benefits from less congestion. Now, the impact, for example, on Auckland, my hometown, would see an increase in GDP of between 1.5% to 2% from this alone. Now, Henley concluded the benefits or savings to businesses already implementing the 4-day week at £92 billion. And then finally, we should consider, I think, the broader benefits to society of a 4-day week. And again, here I've drawn on the Henley survey. So when asked, after spending more family time, 55% of workers said they would use the time for home cooking, 54% for shopping, 49% fitness, 48% for personal study, 43% for cinema and theatre, 40% for improving work skills, 39% for eating out, 25% for volunteering, and 24% for caring for the sick and elderly. And 23% would set up their own business or take up a side hack. Now, it's not difficult to see from there are beneficial impacts on obesity, the skills shortage, care, and also, very important in these post-COVID times as we recover from lockdowns, a massive stimulant to a local economy. Now, it's my belief that the 4-day week benefits both business, employees, and society, and it reflects the fact that the 5-day week is a 20th century construct, and frankly, traditional methods of working are no longer fit for purpose for the 21st century. Independent research and company experience are together demonstrating that the 4-day week is an idea whose time has come. Thank you.